Hey everybody, welcome back to Secret Sonics. Before we get into this episode, I just want to acknowledge the passing of Neil Peart, the drummer from Rush. We mentioned Rush in this episode actually. However, we recorded this before anybody heard about his passing, and I was sad to learn about it last night. He really was an amazing drummer and musician, and the world has benefited from his presence. And so thank you, Neil Peart, for your music and for your drumming. Otherwise, this episode is a bit of a ramble and schmooze. This is actually the first time we had an impromptu visitor on air and was incorporated into the podcast, so that was exciting. So anyways, I really enjoyed my conversation with Meir and also with Ryan Liatzis, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation. So without further ado, here it is, Meir Levine on Secret Sonics. You're listening to Secret Sonics, a podcast exploring the creative side of music production. Hello and welcome back to Secret Sonics. I am your host, Ben Wallach. My guest today is Meir Levine. Meir Levine is a musician, producer, and manager based out of New York. His band Yimmy is fresh off a release with Matisyahu and has an album release planned for the beginning of 2020. I first met Meir back in the day when I actually helped track some vocals and guitars for an album he was producing. I think this was about 5 years ago. And we've kind of crossed paths here and again. He actually came and visited my studio in Israel a few years ago. Maybe it was less than that. I don't remember. But anyways, we've been in touch. And he reached out to me about the podcast. And then I reached out to him, asking him to join me. And I'm thrilled to have him. So welcome to Secret Sonics.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate it. It's been we go back. You know, we kind of crossed paths a while ago, and I think we kind of realized we have a bunch of things that we kind of think similarly on, and it's cool to talk to you about some stuff.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. As usual, it's great to see you, man. So tell us in a bit, like I guess not too long, just because I want to get more to the meat and potatoes. But how did you get started getting involved in music production?
So first off, I want to say I wouldn't exactly call myself a music producer, you know, because I think that's unfair to the people who actually do all the actual serious work and who have, put in years of effort. I do produce. I like to call myself more of a curator of sorts, or, director in the sense. I do, since I was a kid, my dad was a singer, in music for a long, long time. Grew up in the house. Music was everywhere, like many people, who grew up around musicians. And it's always been the thing for me that just been the most interesting thing in the world for me. So, as a kid, I started listening to all sorts of music and getting into different kinds of things, playing guitar. And I think, the first time I ever actually was involved in any kind of production of any sorts was that, the school I was in, this is where we kind of met. We were tasked with making an album for them and for ourselves. We were a bunch of kids. We had absolutely no clue what we were doing, but we kind of all had vision. We all had a sense of what we kind of wanted and the kind of vibe we wanted to, explore. And that, I think we came in kind of with things. So Ari Kunstler was on your podcast,
yes,
right?
He was. Yeah.
Yeah. So
he was he's the middleman with us.
Yeah. But by the grace of many people, and we kind of ended up in his studio, and over the next year and a half or so, we developed this project that was not easy. I mean, the music was okay, in hindsight, obviously, you look back and it's okay, but we kind of,
there were some nice songs in there, man. There were some nice songs, but the process was really what we were after. So we really were all looking to create something really genuine and just to make something, and whatever happens. We had some rules and things we had to abide by because we weren't doing this just for us. But I think, it kind of really developed my own sense of exploration when it comes to music and chasing and trying to figure out how to get what you're trying to, even if you don't know what you want, putting yourself in a process to bring the other people's ideas in and mix it with your own, figure out what you like and all that stuff. And must have been 19 at the time.
And I was playing a lot. I was playing a lot of live stuff, before that, and I was playing a lot of guitar. But that was my first real exploration. And Aria himself taught me a lot. I was technically the producer of the album. He could take co-producer credit, but and I wouldn't have been anything without him. But I lived in his studio for 8-9 months. We just sat there all day. I watched him edit. I watched him, mix. I watched guitar tracking, songwriting development, and all that kind of stuff.
The best way to learn is to just see people that know what they're doing already doing it.
And he's a great guy, and it was a really eye-opening experience for me. It really set my love for just all these kinds of. I like exploration when it comes to music. It's like my favorite thing. I don't usually have much of an agenda when it comes to anything, and I'm not inordinately talented myself. So I guess what my
don't put yourself down too much.
Well, yeah, I know. I love just finding some kind of thing that I haven't done before or seen before and just going all in on it.
I think that's awesome. I think a lot of that's like a great way, like to be creative. Sometimes you got to let the exploration process happen, and you have to see where things go. Yeah. And like people that are like over obsessed about like parts that they hear in their brain, it's like a much more difficult way to get things going. It's less fluid. You know what I mean? Like.
Totally.
And you never know where the production's going to kind of end up going, so you kind of have to be open to it. I think it's like a much healthier way to go about it.
Yeah, I just recently heard there's a great podcast. I'm sure you've heard of it. The Broken Record podcast with Rick Rubin. Rubin and Malcolm Gladwell have this new podcast. They've been doing it for like a year and a half. Wow. It's fascinating. They talk to
rock stars. I guess not really rock stars, but like basically rock stars. That's their professions.
Yeah. So they had a great episode a couple weeks ago with Andre 3000 from Outkast.
Yeah,
who's a really interesting guy. And they were talking about some things, and they were talking about the difficulty that a lot of bands have, a lot of artists have when it comes to a second album or a third album especially after success. And it's pretty simple, is because a lot of times you go into the studio with a band or a group with a bunch of friends, and you just go in and, hey, we're making music. Whatever happens, wherever it ends up, it ends up. When a certain point it gets to expectations come on, and your identity is formed, so to speak, then it's harder to just go in without any, to just, hey, we're gonna try this, and whatever happens. It might suck, it might be really bad, it might be great. And it's when there's no stakes involved. It's wonderful. But that's really what music, to me, that's the thing that has always driven me. It's just exciting to me.
That's awesome. Was there a specific song or album that really opened your mind to what could be accomplished?
There's so many, because I've been through many phases of my musical journey, and what has forever I was listening to records and albums and just trying to find some new things. When I was young, and I'm not a bit. I can think about this. I think it was Rush's one of the Rush albums.
Moving Pictures.
Was it? I'm terrible at the album names thing, but it was. I remember I was sitting on the school bus as a kid, and I had just been introduced to classic rock, and it was blowing my mind. Like every kid who listens to Guns N' Roses, and when they're a kid, and like I can't believe it. And I remember I heard Rush. I heard I think it was either Spirit of Radio or the Manhattan Project. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, I don't think I've ever dug into it. That kind of just like I was like, what the heck is this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this is not something I've ever heard. And I'm not even a big Rush fan, I wouldn't say.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
Like that was a certain point in my life where it really like opened a big doorway for me into just different kinds of music, thinking about what music can be. Later on, I really got into the Grateful Dead, which transformed a lot of how I think about live music and performance and spirit when it comes to music. So that was it's been a huge influence for me. But I think somewhere in between, that's really kind of where I land. Somewhere, I've always liked singer-songwriters. Sometimes cheesy singer-songwriters. I always like songwriting and melodies, and all that stuff. John Mayer is a big influence of mine. Just the way he kind of blends serious musicality and like structured songwriting and guitar playing.
He's kind of that icon of our generation, right? That guitar singer-songwriter dude.
Definitely is.
Yeah. By the way, fun fact about me is that my first ever concert I ever went to was Rush at Madison Square Garden. Yeah, I went with my cousin and our drummer. Yeah, it was fun.
I'm sure that was really fun.
Yeah, that was a jump in the Rush water. Anyways, so tell me a bit about what you're working on these days. What are you up to? So
my band, Yimmy, we rebranded around 6 months ago from our old band. We had started playing a lot of shows out, just bigger shows. We had paired up with a bunch of bands.
What's the genre? What's like Yimmy's vibe? Like, what's the genre?
I would call ourselves a rock and roll funk band with a lot of world influences. So we all come from like rock and roll, funk, blues. That's kind of our soul, a lot of soul too. When it comes to our, when we started playing, it's funny. I don't know if I'm giving the secrets away, but when we started, our first show was a total, like, we kind of figured it out. We basically put together a band for a show. And the Moshav band called me and asked if we could, so they needed an opener for a show in the city. And, me being, why not? Let's go play. We've been playing together and for a while, and friends are like, hey, let's go play for 500 people on a Tuesday. Like, let's do it. And we kind of just happened. So we started playing. We playing some covers and all that kind of stuff. But once we started making our own music, it happens, and we started playing more together and rehearsing, and it started forming into this kind of real blend of all things. It's rooted in funk and rock and roll, but there are a lot of Jewish influences in it too. But like I was saying before, our music, whenever we write or do anything, there's really no agenda to it. We're like whatever. I don't know. Whatever comes out.
You're just trying to make. Great, you're just trying to make good music.
Like we'll just play, say, hey, I got this thing. Yeah, and it's wonderful, and our band has a lot of different presences and different real personalities and musical personalities in it, which is really cool for me. It's such a thrill. We have Ryan Liatzis on. He's our he plays keys technically, but he's also one of the best guitar players I've ever met ever. He's just an absolute monster. He's brilliant. He's got his own thing. Our lead singer, bass player Dan Rappaport, he's incredible. He's got a real presence, and he's got a serious.
The stuff I've seen on Instagram are like he's got a lot of energy, a lot of that.
Yeah, he's got a real thing, and he's brilliant in a songwriter in his own right. He's great with melodies and all that kind of stuff. There's Colin Mandel. He's also someone in our band. He's also his own kind of spirit. Our drummer, his name is Kevin Weinberger, but we work with some other drummers as well. Sometimes we'll throw in some horns or different guests, because that's kind of like my thing. I've always liked collaboration. Has always been like my thing.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
I've never been scared of it. I've always find that I love bringing in different energies and vibes to something. It doesn't always work, but I'm really attracted to people with presence. Stage presence, musical presence. That's something that's. I would say that's probably my role. If you want to talk about my role in the band and in general, how I've always operated as a what do you want to call it, a producer or a director or anything, is for me it's always been really important to be listening to someone. For the music, they capture the energy of what's happening, and they kind of can really channel it and move it and how they want. And nothing makes me happier and gives me a bigger thrill than like bringing in someone else and not even fitting it into what we do or to what I do, is to finding what they do really well and enabling them to use that in the context of something that I'm doing or the project that I'm working on. Mm-hmm. So for example, we were lucky enough to we got Modest Yahoo to track with us, and